Why was rejection so devastating? Why did I fear it so much? Why did I work so hard to get acceptance and praise and always had to do a good job? Because if you don't do a good job, you're going to get criticism. And what it began to emerge for me was it's devastating because apparently it's colliding with something inside me. Something in me is rebelling against being rejected. And as painful as the experience is, there's something positive here. Somehow I'm saying you are more than whatever you've just been criticized for. That isn't who you are. That isn't all of what makes you Charlie, so to speak. And the more I played with the idea, I realized that's the struggle. That's what makes rejection painful. I set up a war inside myself. Part of me saying, you are worth something, while another part is saying, there's something wrong with you. And then I began to realize there's two ways of evaluating yourself. Is it based on your performance, or is it based on who you are? And apparently, if you negate who you are, you can't be happy. So when I began to look at that, I realized that I'd experienced, as almost all children that I know anything about, they ran into some rejection somewhere along the line. Mommy or daddy had a bad day and they'd had it up to here, and you were doing one more thing that mom or dad was sick and tired of, and you discovered, well, you're a good little boy or a good little girl if. And I realized that if was that magic word. That was the shift. In other words, if you quit throwing your orange juice on the floor, or if you quit going over by the stairway there where you could fall, or if you would not play too close to the street, all of those ifs were the criteria for whether I was worthwhile or not. And so I began to look at that and realize, well, this deeper worth has nothing to do with if. And so as we grow up, we get caught in that, and so I define myself by all the ifs. And that's where the conspiracy starts. My peers like me if I do this, my parents like me if I do that, the television assures me I'll be a good guy if, and so I start to build me based on ifs. The more they see me as a great guy, but then I always lived while getting accolades. Underneath it was the constant fear, will it last? And what happens when I screw up? And so it was never a complete happiness, because it was always tinged with the possibility that it won't last. So I worked hard to fit into things and to fit in what the culture defined me as. And so I had images of Charlie the great American male, and then, Charlie the musician, and Charlie the student, and Charlie this and Charlie that. And we lived these lives carefully orchestrated and scripted, but sooner or later frustrations building inside. That this is not who I am, and this great struggle is constantly going on, which then causes us to get a little emotional. And most of those emotions at the adult level turn out to be things like, I guess the easiest way to say it is we trigger our fight or flight mechanism. It's adrenaline based. Our egos get hooked. And out of that adrenaline becomes hostility and anxiety and blame and shame. And when I describe these things, a lot of adults are not very long before they pick up on that. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm married to one of those hostile people. Or, yeah, they're always blaming me for it, etc. Well, if you have enough hostility and anxiety and blame and shame for any length of time, you will get a great symptom. It's called stress. And when I ask most crowds, do you have stress? The answer is yes. Well, if you keep prolonged periods of stress, sooner or later your body will react and it will respond according to whatever its genetic programming is. So the long and the short of it is, once we're in that trap, at least what I did was, I'm making a mess of this. The obvious solution is try harder. And so I would try harder. And of course, the circle then becomes, or the cycle becomes vicious. because the harder I try, the more frustrated I get. The more frustrated I get, the more stress I produce. The more stress I produce, the more it tends to break me down, and I try harder.